Well, welcome to week 2 of Rising Above Lies. This week, we're really talking about our relationship with others when it comes to the truth. Last week, we really kind of focused on our relationship with God and how really when we try to twist the truth, we're actually leveraging loopholes to manipulate God or to manipulate reality in our favor. And this week, we're really talking about our relationship with other people, which is also really important and a lot of what Jesus had in mind when he brought up this topic in the Sermon on the Mount was both our relationship with God, but also our relationship with others. And so we might ask the question this week, are we leveraging loopholes to manipulate others, to get what we want from others? You know, that's usually what we're doing when we lie to others, is trying to either avoid something that we don't want or to get something that we do want, right? It's the infamous, the dog ate my homework, in hopes that we won't get an F on it, that we would have a good enough excuse, right? And so we make up an excuse for why we didn't come through. We're trying to get out of something. We're trying to leverage some loophole to manipulate someone else to get what we want or to not get what we don't want. All right, well, that's it in a nutshell. And God is concerned about this. This is why in the Ten Commandments we see commands like, you shall not bear false witness against your neighbor, right? You're not going to testify falsely against someone in court, right? This is a big deal to God, that justice. This is really an issue of justice. When you start lying to other people, you are twisting what is just and what is right and what is good. And so in Psalm 15 then, it's no wonder that God places such a high premium on how we relate honestly or dishonestly with others. And the whole premise here of Psalm 15 is like, who is worthy to enter the presence of God? And of course, when Psalm 15 was written, it would have been written during a time where the tabernacle or the temple of God were in use. And so it was structured in a way where there was a holy space right in the centermost part of the temple, the Holy of Holies, where the Ark of the Covenant representing God's very presence dwelt. And over the Ark of the Covenant, they had built these beings, these statues of beings called cherubim. And a cherub was like an angelic being that was kind of a guardian of the heavenly space, right? A fearsome warrior kind of being. And so these cherubim were huge. Their wings filled and touched and went from edge to edge of this Holy of Holies. And it kind of represented this awesome experience of like, not anyone enters this space, not just anyone. It needs to be someone who is holy and set apart for this task. And so that would have been the high priest in their day. And there was a purification ritual that you would go through to be able to enter into that space. But, more broadly speaking, it's kind of like, well, who does God want in his presence? Who is worthy of being in a good relationship with God? We might think of it that way. And here are some of the things that God looks for in someone who's going to be invited into his presence. Or as the Message describes it, who is on God's guest list? And it's amazing how many of those things have to do with our honesty and this idea of justice in our relationships with others, right? Are we trying to manipulate others for our own ends, or are we living honestly and justly towards our neighbors and in our relationships with other people? And really, so much of it, tell the truth and don't blame your neighbor for something, really traces back to those 10 commandments of do not bear false witness against your neighbor. And then there's other things that's like, keep your word even when it costs you, or make an honest living and don't take bribes. And at the end of the day, this comes down to matters of justice and how we treat others, and whether we're trying to manipulate a situation to get the upper hand over someone else or at someone else's expense. And God would say, no, I would rather you be honest with your neighbor even when it costs you something. This is what I'm looking for as your God. God is amazing in that sense, that he not only cares about how we deal with him, but he also cares with how we deal with others, and in fact links the two together, right? Jesus is famous for linking, like, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, but also love your neighbor as yourself, and you can't separate the two, right? Because if you're not loving your neighbor well, you're not loving God well. And if you're not loving God well, you're not loving your neighbor well. And the two can't be separated. So in your groups today, you're going to have a chance to kind of kick around and go down memory lane a little bit of like, what are some ways that lies have hurt you or that your lies have hurt someone else? And you might think of lighthearted examples, or you might think of heavier examples. And you may think of examples that are really words and speech that were untruthful, or you may think of ways that people lived or acted or in some way treated you dishonestly. In our culture today, we are often so concerned about large issues of justice, which we should be. But a lot of times we lose sleep over issues that we have very little direct control over, while ignoring the very acts that we do have utmost control over. And so this is something I think we need to flip on its head. Not that we stop caring at all about large issues, but that we care the most about the issues that we have the most control and influence over. And at the end of the day, the thing we have the most control and influence over when it comes to justice in this world is making sure that I, the guy in the mirror, am living justly, that I'm living honestly in my relationships with the people closest to me and the people that I see on a day-to-day basis and the people I do business with and so forth. Like, am I being an honest person? As it turns out that it matters a lot to God, and it mattered a lot to Jesus. And Jesus would challenge us to work towards becoming the kind of person by his power and by his strength who can just say yes and it always be yes, even if it hurts us. And no, and we mean no. How can we become a people known for our honesty, our truthfulness in our lives and in our speech?